Orientation by Sebastian Escalante. First, I'm going to read off my poem called Evolution Rainbow. Sexual orientation, labeled as heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual. A label that changes with the weather, but a label that can impact lives forever. Sexual orientation, where genetics is a foundation, where a network of genes can determine attraction, where a gene may be in all but expressed in few. Sexual orientation, where genes are influenced by our own environment, influenced by the X chromosome, influenced by prenatal hormones. Sexual orientation, where our attraction isn't pronounced, but still the largest difference in humans. Awareness of sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is about who you're attracted to and want to have a relationship with. Sexual orientation includes gays, lesbians, straights, bisexual, and asexual. Sexual orientation is a huge deal in today's society as we have fights over gay marriages and if it should be legal or not in the politics, and we are having teachers and people coming out that they are of different sexual orientation than the norm, and they are being suspended or blackballed and put on administrative leave and stuff like that. So sexual orientation has been a big part of today's society and politics and just everyday life. Next, I want to talk about the components of my poem. The first section, I want to talk about how I stated that sexual orientation as being a label that is put on humans and how it impacts lives. I want to talk about Michael Sam, a football defensive end at the University of Missouri and was coming into the NFL draft in the year 2014. Now, Michael Sam was a SEC Defensive Player of the Year his senior year and first team All-American. He was the best of the best in the toughest conference of college football, and scouts were talking about his great first step, his powerful rush moves, and his speed, and how he could change an NFL defense, and he was a projected first-round pick. But before the 2014 NFL draft happened, he came out as being a homosexual. Now, for Michael Sam, this was a big relief because he was able to be himself and let people know who he really was. But for NFL teams, this was a huge red flag because they started talking about how he would cause problems in the locker room. And now Michael Sam, who was a first-round pick, dropped all the way to being a seventh-round pick. And that changed everything dramatically because here's this guy who was supposed to be making millions of dollars, and now he's just struggling to even get the chance to show a team that he can play at the next level and he can help their defense excel and be that cornerstone player that every NFL team wants. Next, I want to talk about my middle two sections and how I'm trying to let people not in the science world understand that sexual orientation comes from genetics, and genetics is a foundation, and how it can be in all of us. This chromosome that it is, this gene can be in all of us, but possibly only expressed in the few people, and that sexual orientation can be influenced by our environment and X chromosome and prenatal hormones that we just can't not control. But I'll go over that a little bit more in my next slide. Lastly, I want to talk about my last section on how our sexual orientation isn't as far out of the norm as it used to be, but it's still one of the biggest barricades in society. I put that there because I feel like in today's society, even though that people are getting more and more used to it, I feel like there's still that wall of people hold up to protect themselves against it, and that people who come out are probably held at a disadvantage and not given the same opportunities as people who look at as normal. Now I want to talk about the research done. In a research done by Bailey and Pillard in 1991 and Pillard and Weinrich in 1986, the first clues that sexual orientation was strongly influenced by genetics came from family and twin studies. And in these studies, they found that gay men have a higher number of homosexual relatives in comparison to heterosexual men, and that sexual orientation is a highly heritable trait. So in this study, they show that the environment that person grows up in and the genes that they get from their relatives, their parents and stuff, can be impact their sexual orientation. But another study, they noticed that the male homosexuality appeared to be maternally loaded, which led them to focus on the X chromosome. And they found that the male sexual orientation was linked to a region near the end of this chromosome called XQ28. Now, in the analysis of these studies, it revealed that the XQ28 allele sharing was significantly elevated among gay brothers, but that the XQ28 didn't appear to be linked to female sexual orientation. And in doing this, it led them to the X chromosome because males are given the double XX chromosome and females are born with the XY chromosome, so that it shows that maybe males are more highly, I guess, to be homosexual because of this allele that was linked to the X chromosome called the XQ28. Lastly, I want to talk about the conversation I had and the hardest part of creating this poem. The hardest part was definitely coming up with a poem that would help get some of this information from this paper to the outside world and have them understand it, since not everyone comes from a scientific background and able to read scientific writing and all these big words that scientists love to use. So that was definitely the hardest part, because not everyone knows how DNA and genetics and how the body and all that works together. So just making it simple enough and let them know just how stuff can be influenced simple way and still making it, I guess, understandable and for them was definitely the hardest part. Now, my conversation, it was understanding and it was simple, and I had to explain some stuff since it was my mom who doesn't come from a scientific background and she doesn't know how genes and DNA and genetics, all that works, and how all these alleles impact a person. So it was tough, but it was very good because I was able to try to explain to her and let her understand how in the studies they show genetics can be the foundation and the effects that it has on a person. So it was really good. And that's it.